There is a stage in life that no one warns you about. A stage that feels like confusion, emptiness, and isolation, all happening at the same time. It doesn't feel like growth. It feels like losing yourself. Things that once made sense stop making sense. People you used to connect with start feeling distant. Motivation disappears. Clarity fades. And the worst part is, you can't explain it to anyone. Because from the outside, nothing looks wrong. But inside, something is changing. And you start asking yourself questions like, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel disconnected from everything? Why does life feel so empty even when nothing is going wrong? And this is where most people panic. They think they are failing. They think they are going backwards. They think something is broken inside them. But what if this is not a breakdown? What if this is a transition you were never prepared for? There is a stage in every awakening process that feels like darkness. Not because you are losing your way, but because the old way of seeing life is dissolving. And when your old identity starts to dissolve, everything it created around it starts to feel unfamiliar. Your goals feel empty. Your habits feel meaningless. Your desires feel unclear. Even your own thoughts start to feel like they don't belong to you anymore. And this is terrifying for most people. Because the mind wants certainty. It wants structure. It wants identity. But in this stage, identity is breaking down. And that is why it feels like you are losing yourself. But in reality, you are losing the version of you that could no longer carry your next level of growth. This stage is often called the dark night, but it is not darkness in the way people think. It is not punishment. It is stripping. Everything that is not aligned with your deeper truth begins to fall away. Distractions lose their grip. Attachments lose their power. Illusions lose their meaning. And what remains is uncomfortable at first, because it is unfamiliar. Silence. Awareness. Observation. And in that silence, the mind starts to resist. It tries to pull you back into old habits. Old environments. Old versions of yourself. Not because they are good for you, but because they are familiar. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar peace. So during this stage, you may find yourself going back and forth. One moment you feel like you are growing. The next moment you feel completely lost. One moment you feel clarity. The next moment everything feels meaningless again. And this instability is not failure. It is the in-between phase. The space between who you were, and who you are becoming. And most people never recognize this space. So they escape it. They distract themselves. They overthink. They go back to old patterns. They numb what they are feeling. And they repeat the cycle again, never realizing they were actually on the edge of transformation. Because this stage is not comfortable enough to stay in. But not clear enough to fully understand. So it becomes a test of endurance. Not physical endurance, but internal endurance. Can you stay present when nothing feels certain? Can you keep observing yourself when nothing makes sense? Can you resist the urge to go back just because forward feels unclear? This is the real question this stage asks you. And here is what most people don't realize. This darkness is not empty. It is full of reorganization. Your mind is rewriting itself. Your beliefs are being questioned. Your identity is being reshaped. But you cannot see the new structure yet. So it feels like nothing is happening. But something very real is happening beneath the surface. Because every breakdown of identity creates space. And that space is where a new version of you is formed. But before that new version stabilizes, there is a period where you don't recognize yourself at all. And that is the uncomfortable truth. You don't go from old you to new you instantly. You go through a phase where you are neither. And that in-between space feels like uncertainty. But it is actually preparation. Because if you rushed into becoming the new version of yourself without losing the old one, you would just repeat the same patterns in a new form. So life strips you first. It removes certainty. It removes attachment. It removes identity comfort. Not to punish you, but to reset you. And during this reset, you are being trained in something most people never learn. Stillness without identity. Existence without labels. Awareness without attachment. And that is why this stage feels so intense. Because you are no longer being guided by who you were. And you have not yet learned how to live as who you are becoming. So you float in between. But this is where real transformation begins. Not when everything feels clear. But when everything feels unclear, and you do not run from it. Because if you stay long enough in this phase, something starts to stabilize. Not your external life first. But your awareness. You begin to observe instead of react. You begin to feel instead of escape. You begin to understand instead of resist. And slowly, the noise reduces. And in that silence, a new sense of self begins to form. Not forced. Not copied. Not inherited. But discovered. And when you finally come out of this stage, you are not the same person who entered it. Not because you tried to change. But because you allowed yourself to be stripped of everything that was not real. And what remains is something stronger than motivation. Something deeper than identity. Awareness. And from that awareness, a new life begins.